I'm going to do receivers and tight ends together. Receivers and tight ends together, because otherwise we're going to be here forever. So I'm just going to do receivers, tight ends together. Tight ends won't take me too long. Is Hopkins startable? I'd have somebody else. 3 years following me. Let's get it, bro. C-dubs. Appreciate you, homie. All right, receiver rankings. We're going to go over this first tier. I think there's 5 locked-in guys for me this week at this tier, and then 2 others that should be in this tier, but maybe could bounce out of it. But I'm going to go Cooper Kupp against Arizona, CeeDee Lamb against the Saints, no Marshawn Lattimore. If Marshawn Lattimore was there, I might tear him down just a little bit. Not different tier, but CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson against the Niners, Tyreek Hill against Buffalo, Amon-Ra St. Brown against the Buccaneers. All these guys I think have – now I think St. Brown might be in a tier below, but I'm expecting a normal day from him up against Tampa. I think they get him going. Jamal Dean, I talked about that. He's going to be on JMO. I think they feature Amon-Ra St. Brown. They get him right. He's the type – we saw it on receiver. He's a dog, and he commands the football. So I don't think we see him down for too long. But the top 4, Cooper Kupp, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, I don't think we see anything less than, normal. Tyreek does have a tough matchup. He hasn't seen – I want to say he hasn't seen 90 yards yet against Buffalo in his career. I'm pulling that up right now. I want to say he hasn't seen 90 yards yet against Buffalo in his career. There's always a first for everything, right? But I'm pulling it up. I got to get that number, so I'm not just saying it. All right, so against Buffalo in his career, he's had 41 yards, 20 yards, 63 yards, 33 yards, 69 yards, 58 yards, and then last year, 82 yards in the final game of the year. It was week 18. So his career high was 82 yards, and that was last game of the season. So I'm down a little bit, but he can get a touchdown. We know Tyreek is good for a touchdown most weeks. He's had 2 touchdowns against him in those games, in those same games. And then when it comes to the back end of this tier 1, A.J. Brown and Mike Evans both belong here. A.J. Brown with a tough matchup against A.J. Terrell, but he can beat tough matchups. He is matchup proof. And then as far as Mike Evans goes, we saw him last week destroy Washington. He's got another plus matchup against Detroit, so he belongs in this tier. Kupp, Lamb, Jefferson, Hill, St. Brown, A.J. Brown, Mike Evans all belong in this tier. All right, and then as far as the tier 2, the next tier, you see that guy on there right next to me, Jamar Chase? He is in this tier. Going up against KC, we got to see Joe Burrow look better, and we need T. Higgins back to balance this thing out. He's probably going to see a lot of Trent McDuffie on the other side, so I'm tearing him down. We haven't seen the blow-up Jamar Chase game yet, so we got to see him, even though he normally cooks against the Kansas City Chiefs. We got an unhappy Jamar Chase. We have a questionable Joe Burrow right now. We want to see him look stronger. We got to see T. Higgins back on the field. I'd be concerned about Jamar Chase slightly. He has more risk. Could he have 150 and 2 touchdowns? Jamar Chase can do that any week. He's an elite receiver. But I got to tear him down. Same thing goes with Devontae Adams going up against Baltimore. Tough matchup against Marlon Humphrey on the other side. And then we also didn't see it week 1. So we know he can be elite. He's in this tier. Deebo Samuel against Minnesota obviously will be involved, but Brandon Ayuk expected to rev up a little bit. Garrett Wilson against Tennessee. Devontae Smith is probably the more like the name you're probably like, damn, why is he in this tier? Garrett Wilson, a tough matchup against L'Jarius Sneed. I've talked about that. But Devontae Smith, I mentioned the matchup with A.J. Brown and A.J. Terrell on the other side. Devontae Smith should be able to eat out the slot. We saw George Pickens have a few catches, big gains out the slot for the Steelers last week. To round out this tier, Stephon Diggs against Chicago, Jalen Waddle against Buffalo, and Nico Collins against Chicago as well. So both of the Texans receivers belong in this tier, especially against, I think Nico Collins is probably going to see a lot of Jalen Johnson, who's emerging into one of the better cornerbacks in the league. And then Jalen Waddle against Buffalo as a secondary option should be good as well. But Stephon Diggs, if you don't have Stephon Diggs in this tier, he belongs in there. Tier 3. Tier 3, Drake London at the top of this tier. One of the more questionable names I would say that I have in this tier. I feel good about starting Drake London, even though he had a bad game last week against the Steelers. Had a tough matchup going against Darius Slay. And we saw last week, this Philadelphia defense will give up some yards in the passing game. I think they scheme the same way I feel confident about Amon-Ra St. Brown in a bounce-back game. Drake London should be in a bounce back game. If not, he's too high profile and too good of a receiver to be down for too long. If he doesn't play well against Philly, I will unless it's just a Kirk Cousins thing and he just looks like shit, I'll probably put Drake London as a buy low if he doesn't have like a touchdown or 100-yard game. He'll probably be on my buy low list next week because everybody's going to panic. I swear. If he has 5 catches for 60 yards or 4 catches for 50 yards, everybody will panic on Drake London next week. So Drake London, Rashee Rice is next in this tier against Cincinnati. I want to see if he's obviously moved up for me, but I want to see if he's more wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2. My gut says he'll be more inconsistent wide receiver 2. They use him as part of the run game with those quick slants. That's another run play for them. I talked about that with Cooper Kupp as well. There's some teams that do that. Typically, the Lions do that with St. Brown as well. They'll use their slot guys as like quick run plays. It almost, that's what it feels like, but the quick passing game. Rashee Rice is in this tier. Chris Olave against Dallas obviously struggled last week. Tough matchup against his Dallas secondary. Still expecting him to play better than he did last week. Same thing goes for Michael Pittman. Tough matchup against Jair Alexander. He can beat that matchup. Had 8 targets, so obviously the volume's there. Want to see him play better, though. Brandon Ayuk on limited snaps last week. He's in this tier as well. Malik Neighbors is in this tier, going up against a soft Washington defense. Hopefully Danny Dimes looks better and can make him a valid option for your starting lineup. Marvin Harrison, Chris Godwin are in this tier as well. Godwin up against the Lions. Marvin Harrison against the Rams. Probably going to see a lot of Tre'Davious White. DK Metcalf, George Pickens are in this tier as well. DK up against Christian Gonzalez. George Pickens up against going up against Patrick Surtain. So a lot of elite corners. And these guys, I think that second tier and this third tier, I will be shifting these guys around. And I think that was a big problem while we were drafting these guys. Some weeks they can be wide receiver 2s. Other weeks they could be wide receiver 3s. And a lot of it's going to be A, quarterback dependent, B, usage dependent, but C, cornerback. Who are they going against in their matchup? So DK Metcalf, George Pickens are down here in this tier. Terry McLaurin going up against the Giants. I expect a bounce back day from him. Want to see Jaden Daniels get the ball in his hands a little bit more. I think they will do that. DJ Moore is down here going up against his Texas team. Probably see a little bit of Derek Stingley on the other side. And we got to see Caleb playing better. And then a tough matchup for Calvin Ridley. Tough matchup for Calvin Ridley here against the Jets, going up against Sauce Gardner. So like I said, a lot of elite corners here in this, going against some of our wide receiver 2s, you know what I mean? So we got to tear them down for the week. It's not that they won't perform better than wide receiver 2 or 3. It's just the ceiling is typically capped against these better corners. All these guys could have 100 and a touchdown. That is not out of the world of possibilities. But I do want to tear them down a little bit. I think there's some better options going ahead of them. All right, next tier, tier 4. Amari Cooper against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Christian Kirk against the Cleveland Browns. That might be a surprise name, but I think we see a better performance out of him. Denzel Ward probably see a lot of Brian Thomas, who I do have tiered down a little bit. Zay Flowers against the Raiders. Jackson Smith and Jigba over the New England Patriots. Jameson Williams against Tampa Bay. Tank Dell against the Chicago Bears. Obviously, Tank Dell is in this tier. I normally don't put him here. Big play potential, and he was targeted last week. Didn't see the results. I do trust him in my lineups. To round out this tier 4, we got Demarcus Robinson, who's going to play that elevated role now that Puka's out. Trust him in your lineups as a flex or even a back-end wide receiver 3 in your 12-team leagues where you start 3 receivers. Brian Thomas against Cleveland. Jacoby Myers against the Ravens. Jaden Reed has slipped down here with the quarterback issue for me and Malik Willis. I think he'll still be involved, and he's the only Green Bay Packers receiver I really want to start, but I don't trust him fully. Going up against the Colts and with Malik Willis, that starting quarterback. The last 2 in this tier, Keenan Allen dealing with a slight injury. We got to make sure he's on the field. And Xavier Worthy is here at the back end of this tier just for the pure upside. I think he has a lot of risk as well. So those are most of the wide receiver 3 flex options I'd want to start. And then I'll go into this tier 5, and that'll be about it for now. I'm only going to go in this tier 5. If you want the full rankings, like I said, they're on the Dub Club. You guys can get access to it. I posted in the basic tier for this week. Most times it's only going to be in the fantasy football tier. Adonai Mitchell is here in this 5th tier against Green Bay. Khalil Shakir against Miami has upside, but going up against Miami. Brandon Cooks going up against his former team, the New Orleans Saints, is in this tier, in this 5th tier. Keon Coleman is in this 5th tier. Deontay Johnson against the Chargers is in this 5th tier. Christian Watson going up against the Colts in this tier in case they get him involved in some reverses or he has some yak ability. Much lower floor for him than some of these other guys. And then Rashid Shaheed, want to see him. I know he had the big catch last week, but I want to see his involvement going up against a pretty talented Dallas defense that does limit some things. All right. Actually, I'll go through the 6th tier too. Really quick through the 6th tier. Romo Dunze, got to make sure he's playing this week going up against Houston. I would put him in this tier. Cortland Sutton, even as the wide receiver 1 for the Broncos, he's in the 6th tier. Rashad Bateman, I think he's in the 6th tier, has potential for more. Jordan Addison up against the Niners. Greg Dortch, a good floor play, not a lot of ceiling, going up against the Rams. Tyler Lockett, same thing, good floor play, not a lot of ceiling, going up against the Patriots. Joshua Palmer, Ladd McConkey, both of these guys are right next to each other going up against the Panthers. Adam Thielen against the Chargers. DeAndre Hopkins, concerned about that MCL injury, want to see his workload increase going up against the Jets. And then Hollywood Brown and Jerry Jeudy rounding out the 6th tier. Of Hollywood Brown is able to give it a go. Jerry Jeudy, we need to see Deshaun Watson play a little bit better. All right? And then as far as tight ends go, I'm going to go really quickly through this. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on them. None of the tight ends played well, but I'm going to go through the top 3 tiers here for tight end. Sam Laporta and Trey McBride are in a tier by themselves, in my opinion. Sam Laporta against Tampa, Trey McBride against the Rams. Both these guys are in a tier by themselves. In the next tier, I think you could swap any one of these guys between 3 and you know what I'm saying? Like that 3 to 12 spot, your tight end ones. I think all these guys are mixed match. Travis Kelce, Dalton Kincaid, Mark Andrews, Evan Ingram, George Kittle, Pitts against Philly, Isaiah Likely against the Raiders, Brock Bowers against the Ravens. I think all these guys have potential, and there's a lot of question marks about them all. Some of them are floor guys like Kelce, Ingram, and Kittle are all floor guys. Dalton Kincaid, Andrews, Kyle Pitts, Isaiah Likely, a little bit more risky. Brock Bowers, a little bit more risky. All of them are tight end ones for me this week, though. As far as this 3rd tier, we got Dallas Goedert against Atlanta. I wanted to put him in that 2nd tier, but I think he's a little bit more risky. Doesn't carry the upside. Would not surprise me to see him have a strong day. Taysom Hill, Pat Freiermuth against Denver, Colby Parkinson against the Arizona Cardinals, Dalton Schultz against the Bears, Noah Fant against New England, Zach Ertz against the Giants. Everybody else is too risky to even name. So for me, those are the top 3 tiers. If you're looking for tight end 2 options, there's some out there, but they're a coin flip at this point. Full rankings in the Dub Club, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the graphics, enjoyed the tiers. I spent way more time on this than I wanted to, but I think it was for good use. What did y'all think about the rankings? Good to go? Good to go?